The fluorescent lights of Nexus 7's bioscanner pulsed over Sarah Mitchell's form for the third time that morning. The Arthropodian security officer clicked its mandibles in frustration, compound eyes reflecting the anomalous readings on the screen. "Something wrong with your equipment?" Sarah asked quietly, adjusting her standard-issue academy uniform. Her small frame and pale complexion made her appear even younger than her 17 years. "Unusual cellular density for a human your age," the officer chittered. "And your neural patterns are complex." Sarah shrugged, the practiced motion of someone used to deflecting attention. "Earth's gravity is higher than most habitable worlds. We tend to be denser." She offered a slight smile. "As for my brain, well, I've been told I'm an overthinker." The security officer waved her through with two of its forelimbs, mandibles still twitching with uncertainty. Sarah grabbed her worn backpack and hurried toward her first day at the Galactic Academy's xenobiology course. The Academy's corridors were a testament to interstellar architecture, sweeping crystalline archways designed to accommodate species of all sizes, atmospheric barriers maintaining different environmental conditions for various life forms, and gravity plates that could be adjusted on a step-by-step basis. Among the diverse stream of students, Sarah's human form seemed almost mundane. She found her classroom easily enough. The Academy's AI guidance system had mapped it directly to her neural implant. As she entered, conversations dimmed to curious whispers. 20 pairs of eyes, some compound, some bioluminescent, some multifaceted, turned to study the new arrival. Professor Xylith, a meditation being composed primarily of swirling plasma contained within a humanoid force field, gestured toward an empty seat. Our new student. Please join us. We were just discussing cellular adaptation in extreme environments." Sarah slipped into the indicated seat, unfortunately right next to Vexthor, a centaurian whose reputation for disdain toward humans had preceded him. His upper set of arms crossed defensively while his lower pair tapped an irritated rhythm on his desk. "As I was saying," Professor Xylith continued, "different species have evolved unique methods of surviving hostile conditions. Would anyone care to share their species adaptations?" Vexthor's hand shot up immediately. "Centaurians can survive in vacuum for up to 30 standard minutes, process radiation into useful energy, and our cellular structure allows us to regenerate lost limbs." His side-eye toward Sarah carried clear implications about human fragility. "Interesting, yes," Professor Xylith's plasma form rippled thoughtfully. "Miss Mitchell, perhaps you could share some human adaptations?" Sarah shifted in her seat, voice barely above a whisper. We're pretty basic, Professor. No special abilities, really. Just adaptable, I guess." A ripple of barely suppressed laughter moved through the classroom. Vexthor didn't bother hiding his smirk. "Adaptable? Is that what humans call being the weakest spacefaring species? No natural defenses, no enhanced abilities, barely 2 centuries of interstellar travel." "That's enough, Vexthor," Professor Xylith interrupted, but the damage was done. Sarah spent the rest of the class in silence, taking notes and avoiding eye contact while appearing to struggle with even basic xenobiological concepts. As students filed out after class, Vexthor deliberately bumped into Sarah with one of his lower arms, sending her notes scattering across the floor. "Oh, sorry," he said, voice dripping with insincerity. "I forgot how fragile humans are." Sarah gathered her papers slowly, waiting until the classroom had emptied. As she stood, Professor Xylith's plasma form shifted closer. "Don't let them discourage you, Miss Mitchell. Humans may lack obvious advantages, but your species has survived challenges that would have broken many others." Sarah nodded without looking up. "Thank you, Professor." But as she turned to leave, her reflection in the classroom's crystalline wall showed something the others had missed, a flash of steel in her eyes that didn't match her meek demeanor, and a subtle tension in her stance that spoke of carefully contained strength. In her private quarters that evening, Sarah sat at her desk, composing her daily report with military precision, Day 1 at Galactic Academy proceeding as expected. Cover identity maintaining integrity. No sign yet of purist activity, but social dynamics conform to intelligence reports. Continuing surveillance. She encrypted the message with quantum protocols that wouldn't be invented for another decade and sent it through channels hidden beneath the Academy's standard communications. As she prepared for bed, Sarah allowed herself a small smile. Let them think her weak. Let them underestimate humanity. History had shown time and again that was usually the last mistake an opponent made. 2 weeks into the semester, Sarah's reputation as the fragile human was firmly established at the Galactic Academy. She fumbled basic anti-gravity exercises, appeared winded after standard physical training, and continued to struggle with xenobiology concepts that even first-cycle students mastered easily. Yet beneath the surface, things weren't quite what they seemed. During the Academy's mandatory crisis simulation, Sarah's class faced a scenario involving a catastrophic life support failure. As environmental systems shut down and emergency force fields flickered, Vexthor immediately took charge, barking orders with his usual confidence. Crystallines to the front, your bodies can withstand the pressure loss. Methane breathers, take the emergency pods. His forearms gestured dramatically as he coordinated the evacuation. Humans should probably just. He turned to mock Sarah, only to find her station empty. She was already at the environmental control panel, fingers flying across the holographic interface. While others panicked, Sarah methodically bypassed failing systems, rerouted power, and stabilized the critical sections. Her movements were precise, almost mechanical, until she noticed Vexthor watching. Immediately, she fumbled the next sequence, causing a minor power surge. Step aside, Vexthor shouldered her away from the controls. Leave the technical work to species who can handle it. But in those few moments before she deliberately failed, he'd seen something that didn't fit her usual incompetence. Professor Xylitha's plasma form pulsed with interest. Interesting approach, Miss Mitchell. Almost as if you've had experience with emergency protocols. My father works in space station maintenance, Sarah stammered, eyes downcast. I've picked up a few things. Later that day, in the Academy's massive dining hall, Sarah sat alone at her usual table, pushing unfamiliar alien vegetables around her plate. Her enhanced hearing easily picked up the conversations around her, most discussing the day's simulation. Did you see how the human nearly crashed the whole system? A crystalline student chimed, their silicon-based form resonating with amusement. What do you expect? They barely understand quantum mechanics, another added. I heard they still use chemical rockets on some of their colonies. Sarah suppressed a smile, knowing that humanity's apparent technological backwardness was carefully crafted. The quantum drives that powered human ships were generations ahead of what they shared with the galactic community, but that was classified at the highest levels. A sudden hush fell over the dining hall as the Academy's emergency sirens began to wail. Sarah's hand instinctively moved to where a weapon would be if she weren't undercover. The Academy's AI announced, warning. Containment breach in Xenobiology Lab 7. All students proceed to designated safety zones. Panic erupted as students rushed toward the exits. Sarah watched as Vexthor tried to organize an evacuation, but his usual authority crumbled in the face of real danger. Through the chaos, her enhanced vision caught movement in the ventilation system, something dark and sinuous slithering through the ducts. She knew exactly what it was, a void serpent, one of the most dangerous predatory species in known space. The specimen in Lab 7 was supposed to be sedated for research, but somehow it had awakened. Its neural toxin could paralyze most species instantly. Sarah purposefully tripped, falling behind the crowd as they evacuated. Once alone, she pulled a small device from her boot, a neural scanner disguised as a fashion accessory. The readings confirmed her fears. The void serpent was hunting, and it was heading straight for the junior students' dormitory. For a moment, she struggled with her cover identity. Stopping the creature would require skills no ordinary human student should possess. But as distant screams echoed through the station, Sarah made her decision. Sometimes maintaining cover meant less than saving lives. She was about to move when footsteps approached. Vexthor rounded the corner, apparently having returned to help stragglers. His eyes widened seeing Sarah still there. Are you suicidal? We need to evacuate now. He reached for her with his upper arms. Sarah straightened, momentarily forgetting to maintain her timid posture. You need to coordinate the evacuation of the lower levels, she said, her voice carrying an authority that made Vex-Thor pause. I'll make sure the path to the escape pods remains clear. You? But you can barely. Trust me, she said, then caught herself, forcing her shoulders to hunch and her voice to waver. I mean, please? I can help. Vex-Thor stared at her for a long moment, confusion evident in his four eyes. Something about her seemed different, but before he could process it, another scream echoed through the station. He nodded reluctantly and hurried toward the lower levels. As soon as he was gone, Sarah's demeanor changed completely. Her movements became fluid, predatory. She pulled a second device from her boot, this one definitely not standard student equipment. As she moved toward the ventilation system, her neural implant connected with the Academy's security network, giving her full access to the environmental controls. Sorry about this, she whispered to the empty hallway, but sometimes the best cover is a series of believable failures. With that, she began implementing her plan, knowing that whatever happened next would make it much harder to maintain her carefully constructed facade of mediocrity. The Void Serpent moved through Nexus 7's ventilation system like liquid shadow, its bioluminescent patterns pulsing with predatory intent. Sarah tracked its movement through her neural interface, her enhanced reflexes ready as she calculated intercept points. The creature was heading exactly where she'd feared, toward the junior dormitories where the youngest students lived. 3 levels below, Vex-Thor was organizing an evacuation when his communications implant crackled. Secondary life support failing in Section 7, Sarah's voice came through, unusually clear and commanding. Reroute everyone through the quantum physics lab. He hesitated, for arms gesturing in frustration. That's the longest route to the escape pods. We should. Trust me, Sarah cut him off, then added a nervous stutter to maintain her cover, please. I think I found something in the environmental controls. Before Vex-Thor could argue, the life support warnings in Section 7 turned red. He cursed in 3 different alien languages, but followed her suggestion, redirecting the evacuation route. Meanwhile, Sarah had reached the maintenance shaft above the dormitories. Her augmented vision pierced the darkness, tracking the Void Serpent's thermal signature. The creature was massive, nearly twice the size listed in the Academy's records. This was no ordinary specimen, and its escape was far too convenient. Computer, she subvocalized through her classified military neural link, analyze Void Serpent's growth pattern. The response confirmed her suspicions. Subject shows signs of illegal genetic modification. Growth rate exceeds natural parameters by 300%. Genetic markers indicate purist bioengineering. Sarah's jaw tightened. The purists, radical xenophobes who opposed human integration into galactic society, had obviously planted the creature. But why target a school? Unless... A scream shattered her thoughts. Through the grating, she saw a young crystalline student, no more than 12 Earth years old, frozen in fear as the Void Serpent descended from a vent. The creature's neural toxin would be especially lethal to silicon-based life forms. Sarah had seconds to decide, maintain her cover or save the child. It wasn't really a choice at all. She crashed through the ventilation shaft, landing between the student and the serpent in a crouch that no ordinary human could achieve. Her hand moved with blur-inducing speed, deploying a sonic deterrent that should have stopped the creature. The Void Serpent paused, then attacked anyway. Its genetic modifications had made it immune to standard countermeasures. Sarah pushed the crystalline student toward the door. Run! What followed was a display of combat prowess that shattered any pretense of Sarah being a normal student. She moved with augmented speed and precision, every motion efficient and deadly. The Void Serpent struck repeatedly, but Sarah evaded each attack with inhuman reflexes. From the doorway, Vex-Thor watched in stunned silence. He had returned to check the upper levels, only to find the supposedly fragile human engaging one of the galaxy's deadliest predators in hand-to-hand combat. Sarah noticed her audience, but couldn't afford to maintain her cover any longer. She activated her neural combat systems, her eyes glowing slightly as tactical overlays enhanced her vision. The Void Serpent struck again, but this time Sarah was ready. She rolled under the attack, pulling a small device from her boot, a quantum phase disruptor disguised as an ornamental buckle. The technology was centuries ahead of anything the Academy possessed. With precise timing, she activated the device, creating a localized field that destabilized the creature's modified genetic structure. The Void Serpent convulsed, its enhanced cells breaking down before collapsing into a dormant state. Sarah stood slowly, her breathing controlled despite the intense combat. She turned to find not just Vexthor, but Professor Xylith and several other students staring at her in shock. She started to stammer, trying to recover her meek persona, but Vexthor cut her off. "Don't," he said, all four arms crossed. "I don't know what you are, but you're definitely not a struggling student." Professor Xylith's plasma form pulsed with intense colors. "Perhaps, Miss Mitchell, it's time for some honesty." Sarah straightened, dropping the timid act entirely. Her posture shifted to a military stance, and her voice carried the weight of command. "You're right. But first, we need to lock down this facility." The Void Serpent's escape wasn't an accident, it was engineered. Someone at this academy is working with the purists, and they just showed their hand. She tapped her neural implant, sending a coded signal to her handlers. "And now that my cover's blown, we need to move fast. Because what happened today was just a test run. The real attack is still coming." The Academy's emergency sirens began blaring again, but this time it wasn't just a single creature causing havoc. Multiple security breaches erupted across the station simultaneously. Sarah's identity might be exposed, but the true crisis was just beginning. As chaos erupted around them, Vexthor stared at the human he had so recently ridiculed. "Who are you really?" Sarah's response was cut off by a massive explosion that rocked the entire station. "That answer," she said, already moving toward the source of the blast, "will have to wait. Right now, we have a school to save." The Academy's central hub had become a war zone. Emergency force fields flickered as multiple breaches threatened the station's structural integrity. Through the chaos, Sarah led a mixed group of students and faculty, her military training now fully evident in every movement and command. "Vexthor, take your upper arms off those controls," she ordered, her voice carrying the authority of someone used to commanding troops. "The purists have compromised the main systems. Everything you input is giving them more access." The Centaurian pulled back, frustration evident on his features. "Then how do we stop this?" Sarah's neural implant interfaced with the station's network, fighting against invasive codes that were tearing through security protocols. "Professor Xylith, I need your plasma form. You can conduct quantum signatures better than any known species." The professor's form shifted closer. "What do you have in mind?" "We're going to create a quantum firewall," Sarah said, pulling equipment from hidden compartments in her supposedly ordinary student uniform. "But first, I owe you all an explanation." As she worked, Sarah revealed the truth. "I am Captain Sarah Mitchell, Special Operations Division, Earth Defense Force. We've been tracking purist activities across the galaxy for the past 3 years. Their attacks have been escalating, and intelligence suggested they were planning something big at the Academy." Vexthor's 4 eyes blinked in succession. "Why here?" "Because," Sarah continued, hands flying over a quantum interface, "the Academy represents everything the purists hate: cooperation between species, shared knowledge, and, most importantly, human integration into galactic society." A nearby explosion rocked the station. Sarah steadied herself and continued. "The Void Serpent was a test, checking our response protocols. Now they're launching their real attack. They want to destroy the Academy and make it look like human sabotage." Professor Xylith's plasma form pulsed with understanding. "To destroy the trust between species." "Exactly." Sarah finished her modifications and turned to the group. "Which is why we need to stop them, together. Each of your species has unique abilities that we need right now. She quickly organized them. The crystalline students could withstand vacuum, perfect for repairing hull breaches. The methane breathers could access areas now flooded with toxic gas. Vexthor's multiple arms and strength made him ideal for handling multiple systems simultaneously. As they worked, Sarah's neural implant intercepted a transmission that made her blood run cold. They're targeting the containment field around Professor Xylith's plasma form, she announced. If it fails, the resulting energy release would destroy half the station, the professor finished calmly. Vexthor moved closer to Sarah, his earlier disdain replaced with grudging respect. You infiltrated our academy, deceived everyone. The academy's central hub had become a war zone. Emergency force fields flickered as multiple breaches threatened the station's structural integrity. Through the chaos, Sarah led a mixed group of students and faculty, her military training now fully evident in every movement and command. Vexthor, take your upper arms off those controls, she ordered, her voice carrying the authority of someone used to commanding troops. The purists have compromised the main systems. Everything you input is giving them more access. The Centaurian pulled back, frustration evident on his features. Then how do we stop this? Sarah's neural implant interfaced with the station's network, fighting against invasive codes that were tearing through security protocols. Professor Xylith, I need your plasma form. You can conduct quantum signatures better than any known species. The professor's form shifted closer. What do you have in mind? We're going to create a quantum firewall, Sarah said, pulling equipment from hidden compartments in her supposedly ordinary student uniform. But first, I owe you all an explanation. As she worked, Sarah revealed the truth. I am Captain Sarah Mitchell, Special Operations Division, Earth Defense Force. We've been tracking purist activities across the galaxy for the past 3 years. Their attacks have been escalating, and intelligence suggested they were planning something big at the Academy. Vexthor's 4 eyes blinked in succession. Why here? Because, Sarah continued, hands flying over a quantum interface, the Academy represents everything the purists hate: cooperation between species, shared knowledge, and, most importantly, human integration into galactic society. A nearby explosion rocked the station. Sarah steadied herself and continued. The Void Serpent was a test, checking our response protocols. Now they're launching their real attack. They want to destroy the Academy and make it look like human sabotage. Professor Xylith's plasma form pulsed with understanding. To destroy the trust between species. Exactly. Sarah finished her modifications and turned to the group. Which is why we need to stop them, together. Each of your species has unique abilities that we need right now. She quickly organized them. The crystalline students could withstand vacuum, perfect for repairing hull breaches. The methane breathers could access areas now flooded with toxic gas. Vexthor's multiple arms and strength made him ideal for handling multiple systems simultaneously. As they worked, Sarah's neural implant intercepted a transmission that made her blood run cold. They're targeting the containment field around Professor Xylith's plasma form, she announced. If it fails, the resulting energy release would destroy half the station, the professor finished calmly. Vexthor moved closer to Sarah, his earlier disdain replaced with grudging respect. You infiltrated our academy, deceived everyone. Sarah led the charge toward the xenobiology section, her steps no longer hiding their military precision. Behind her, Vexthor moved with surprising stealth for his size, all 4 arms ready for combat. They had left the other students securing the lower levels with Professor Xylith, whose plasma form was still stabilizing after the quantum interface. 3 heat signatures ahead, Sarah subvocalized through her neural link. 2 Arcturian. 1. Something I've never seen before. Impossible, Vexthor whispered back. Every known species is documented in the Academy's database. Sarah's lips curved in a grim smile. Exactly. Which means either evolution just happened in our xenobiology lab, or we're dealing with something engineered. They reached the lab's sealed doors. Through the reinforced plexiglass, they could see 3 figures working at the main console. 2 were clearly Arcturian, their crystalline exoskeletons reflecting the emergency lights. The third was hidden beneath a hooded robe, its form shifting and writhing beneath the fabric. Genetic hybridization, Sarah's neural sensors analyzed. They've combined multiple species into a single form. That's how they've been bypassing security. Their genetic signature keeps changing. Vexthor's upper arms clenched while his lower ones prepared the door override. That's forbidden technology. The genetic wars nearly destroyed half the galaxy. The purists don't care about laws, Sarah replied, pulling a quantum phase disruptor from her boot. They believe purity of form is everything. Ironic that they'd use forbidden hybridization to achieve their goals. The door's locking mechanism began to cycle. Sarah turned to Vexthor, her expression serious. You don't have to come with me. This isn't your fight. They attacked my academy, he responded, all four eyes narrowing. They endangered my classmates. And they made me look like a fool for mocking humanity's greatest strength. Which is your ability to surprise everyone who underestimates you. The door slid open. Sarah rolled in first, her enhanced reflexes allowing her to dodge the immediate energy blast from one of the Arcturians. Vexthor followed, using his multiple arms to grab and disable the second attacker. But it was the hooded figure that posed the real threat. It moved with impossible speed, its form constantly shifting between different species attributes, Centaurian strength one moment, crystalline durability the next. Captain Sarah Mitchell, the figure spoke, its voice a disturbing blend of harmonics. We wondered how long it would take you to find us. Sarah's neural implant was running hot trying to analyze the creature's constantly changing patterns. You knew I was here? We suspected Earth would send someone. Humans are so predictable in their protectiveness. The hood fell back, revealing a face that seemed to flow between different species. Always trying to save everyone, to prove they belong among the stars. Better than trying to destroy everything different from yourself, Sarah countered, circling carefully. The hybrid creature laughed. Destroy? We're not destroying anything. We're evolving. Becoming perfect. And once we release our virus into the Academy's air supply, everyone here will evolve too, whether they want to or not. Sarah's eyes widened as her sensors detected a countdown sequence initiating in the lab's environmental systems. They hadn't just been hacking the Academy's security, they'd been preparing for a mass genetic transformation. Vexthor, she called out, never taking her eyes off the hybrid. Remember that weakness in humans you like to point out? Our lack of natural defenses? Not the best time for a biology lesson, Captain, he grunted, still restraining one of the Arcturians. Actually, it's the perfect time. Sarah's hand moved to her uniform collar. Because sometimes, not having natural defenses means you have to create artificial ones. In one smooth motion, she activated her final military asset, a quantum field generator implanted beneath her skin. The device had been her last resort, meant only for extreme emergencies. As the field expanded, it began disrupting all genetic modification within its range. The hybrid creature screamed as its carefully engineered form began to destabilize. The virus countdown in the environmental systems flickered and died as the quantum field corrupted its genetic components. But Sarah knew the cost. The quantum field wouldn't distinguish between hostile and friendly genetic modifications, including her own military enhancements. She could feel her augmentations failing, her enhanced strength and speed fading. Vexthor, she managed through gritted teeth. Finish this. I can't hold it much longer. The Centaurian moved with decisive speed, using all four arms to secure the now weakened hybrid and its companions. As Sarah's quantum field began to fade, her legs buckled beneath her. She had sacrificed her own advantages to save the Academy. The last thing she saw before losing consciousness was Vexthor reaching out to catch her with all four arms, his expression no longer showing any trace of his former prejudice, only respect. Sarah woke in the Academy's medical bay 3 days later. The soft hum of regeneration fields filled the air, and through her now normal vision, she could see the rainbow glow of medical force fields surrounding her bed. Her enhanced abilities were gone, leaving her feeling strangely light, almost hollow. The mighty human warrior returns, a familiar voice said. Vexthor sat nearby, all four arms busy with different tasks, one holding a data pad, two manipulating medical controls, and one offering her a cup of water. How long? Sarah's voice was rough from disuse. 3 days, 4 hours, and 17 minutes. Professor Xylitha's plasma form emerged from a nearby console. Long enough for quite a few things to change at the academy. Sarah tried to sit up, immediately regretting the movement. Without her augmentations, her body felt frustratingly ordinary. The purists? Contained, Vexthor answered with satisfaction. Earth Defense Force arrived an hour after you collapsed. The hybrid and its companions are in high-security containment. Their virus has been neutralized and their network exposed. He paused, all four eyes focusing on her. Though some might argue you paid too high a price. Sarah flexed her hand, missing the subtle power that had once flowed through her enhanced muscles. A small price for saving the academy. About that, Professor Xylitha's form pulsed with what Sarah had learned to recognize as amusement. The Academy Board had quite a lengthy discussion about your enrollment status. I assume my cover as a student is officially blown. Sarah managed a small smile. Oh, completely, Vexthor agreed cheerfully. But they've offered you a different position instead. If you want it. Professor Xylith moved closer. We need someone to teach a new course. Interspecies defense and cooperation. Someone who understands both the importance of strength and the value of appearing weak. Someone who has experienced prejudice and overcome it. Me? Sarah blinked in surprise. But I'm just a regular human now. No enhancements, no special abilities. Vexthor laughed, a sound Sarah had never heard from him before. That's exactly why it should be you. You proved that humanity's true strength never came from technological enhancements or genetic modifications. It came from your adaptability, Professor Xylith continued. Your willingness to appear weak while remaining strong. Your ability to unite different species toward a common goal. These are the lessons our students need to learn. Sarah looked around the medical bay, seeing it with new eyes. Students of various species were gathered in the corridor outside, trying to peek in without being too obvious. Some she recognized from her brief time as a student, others from the crisis. All of them watched her with a mixture of curiosity and respect. There will be challenges, she said thoughtfully. Not everyone will accept a human teacher. Vexthor replied, standing to his full height. Then you can show them what you showed me, that underestimating anyone, human or otherwise, is a dangerous mistake. Sarah's hand touched her collar where the quantum field generator had been. Its absence reminded her of what she'd sacrificed, but looking at the diverse group of students waiting outside, she realized she had gained something far more valuable. When do I start? Professor Xylitha's form brightened. As soon as you can stand without wobbling. Though I suspect you'll have some help. The professor's form gestured to where several students had already organized a study group focused on human biology and culture. Vexthor offered all four hands to help her up. Ready to teach us more about human weakness, Captain? Sarah took his hands, standing slowly but steadily. No, she smiled. Ready to teach you about universal strength. In the days that followed, the Galactic Academy underwent subtle but significant changes. Species that had once self-segregated began to mix more freely. Combat training incorporated lessons about appearing weak while being strong. Most importantly, the story of a human who sacrificed her enhanced abilities to save an alien school began to spread through the galaxy. Some called it propaganda. Others dismissed it as exaggeration. But in the Academy's halls, students of all species learned a crucial lesson. True strength isn't about natural advantages or technological enhancements. It's about the willingness to sacrifice for others, the ability to unite despite differences, and the courage to be underestimated while never losing sight of one's true worth. And if visitors to the Academy noticed that the human combat instructor moved with surprising grace for someone without enhancements, or that her Centaurian teaching assistant watched her back with all four eyes, well, some lessons are best learned through observation. Sarah Mitchell had come to the Academy pretending to be weak. She had lost her enhanced strength saving it. But in the end, she had gained something far more powerful, the ability to teach the next generation that real strength comes not from what you are, but from who you choose to be.